Hello, welcome. Thank you for joining us on this edition of NEWS2. I'm Sandra Gumansing. Topping our newscast, funeral services for former Lieutenant Governor Judge Julio Brady were held Friday on St. Croix at the Holy Cross Catholic Church. Dignitaries, family members, and the community said their final goodbyes to a man that did much for the territory. NEWS2's Erica Parsons has more.
If you didn't know Judge Julio Brady, you would certainly wish that you did. After attending services here today, family, friends, and former colleagues spoke of the judge's achievements, but they also talked about his service, his self, and his great love for the VI people. Judge Julio Brady made his final entrance into the Holy Cross Catholic Church with ceremony. His pallbearers, the National Guard. It's a right reserved for him as a former lieutenant governor. Judge Brady was also a U.S. attorney, attorney general, and judge.
Yes, he was a true public servant.
Tribute after tribute was read, and friends and family said he was a man of distinction in both his professional and personal life, and the VI people were the beneficiaries of his great works.
Today, I say goodbye to my greatest champion, my counselor, my mentor, my dearest darling father, with gratitude for his wonderful life and the blessing that I received in being a part of it.
Judge Brady's legacy of service to our territory will carry on as an inspiration and a call to action for generations to come.
Julio did much for the Virgin Islands. Julio sacrificed for the Virgin Islands, but he kept his integrity, his character intact.
While there was a little sadness, there was far more rejoicing and praise for Judge Brady's wife, who tenderly cared for him in his ailing years.
During his illness, I would take Julio nearly every Sunday to his brother Alan's home for a game of dominoes. I believe firmly in the fact that because you are sick does not mean you to be isolated, does not mean your social life does not continue.
The Catholic priest prayed over the body and performed the last rites of commendation as a final farewell. Erica Parsons, NEWS2.
Again, condolences to family and friends of former Lieutenant Governor Judge Julio Brady. In other news, the Virgin Islands Water and Power Authority has signed an agreement with the EPA to reduce air pollution at 2 of its power plants. According to the agreement announced by the Department of Justice, WAPA will come into compliance with the Federal Clean Air Act at its Crum Bay facility on St. Thomas and Cruz Bay facility on St. John. The settlement resolves numerous violations of the Clean Air Act, including WAPA's failure to properly operate pollution control equipment, to reduce emissions of nitrogen oxides and particulate matter that can cause serious respiratory illness. These pollutants are linked to health problems, including asthma, lung, and heart disease. WAPA will spend approximately $12.2 million to comply with the agreement's requirements. The authority will also pay a $1.3 million penalty. And we will have more on that. Well, this week, Tuesday and Wednesday were 2 grueling days for members of the 31st legislature. They stayed in chambers until the early morning hours to finalize some pieces of funding-related legislation that have tremendous impact to Virgin Islands. NEWS2's April Knight has that story.
During their 2-day session this week, the 31st Legislature approved the GRS reform bill sponsored by Senator Neville James. Among the changes is in Section 754, increasing the retirement age from 50 to 55. An important change also authorizes a member of the system to buy additional time for which he or she has not worked by paying into the system based on a formula. The GRS reform bill is supposed to help save the pension system, which made a controversial decision in August to suspend all loans in order for the system to survive. According to Senator James, the measure may not be perfect, but it's a sound investment that could buy the GRS another 20 years to turn the deficit around. The system is bleeding money to the tune of $135 million every year. The legislature also approved Bill number 31-0190, which would fund the government's operation for fiscal year 2016. In an effort to support the crackdown on crime, Finance Committee Chair Clifford Graham said that the bill reflected additional funding for the VI Police Department, the Department of Justice, and the Bureau of Corrections. The Senate also approved an act authorizing the issuance of some $250 million in bonds, which would help fund Phase 1 and 2 of Melvin Evans Highway, Veterans Drive, and other roadway projects. These pieces of legislation will be sent to the governor for approval. Reporting for News 2, I'm April Knight.
A stream of reports from casinos, small businesses, and banks have recently alerted the Virgin Islands Police Department of yet another cycle of counterfeit money circulation in the territory, as we reported last night. And according to police, while the counterfeits have been reported in both districts, it's St. Croix that's being hit the hardest. News 2's April Knight has that story.
Fake money is circulating in the territory again, and the VIPD is asking residents to be careful. According to the police department, they've gotten a rash of reports from banks and local businesses about the fake bills that turned out to be bleached out singles and fives and made to look like 10s, 20s, 50s, and $100 bills.
Bills are made out of a cloth material. If you have counterfeit ink or the pens to detect it, once you swipe it on that, it basically it'll give you a false reading.
They're circulating mostly on St. Croix. The VIPD says there are some surefire ways of checking if the money in your hands is the real deal.
If you look at it, you don't notice the value, which is on the right side of the bill, is in like a metallic ink. You turn it, if you just like slant it, turn it, you should see it change color between copper to green. Those are the real bill. That's how you'll be able to differentiate the real one from the false one.
Police say the department still cannot pinpoint where the counterfeit money is coming from or how they're getting into the territory. They do know it's not a homegrown operation.
We are trying to find out information we could possibly get as to who's passing it on.
The fake bills are especially hurtful to small businesses, according to police.
Most small businesses cannot afford to, in these times, to have any loss. So it does hurt the businesses around.
Reporting for News 2, I'm April Knight.
Now, you can report any incident of counterfeit money exchange to the VIPD's Economic Crimes Unit. That number is 778-2211 on St. Croix and 774-3942 on St. Thomas. Well, this morning at 10:45 a.m., officers say they met with one of the robbery victims of a robbery that occurred in Kings Hill Cemetery. According to the victim, he and other men were working on the preparation of a tomb at the cemetery when sometime after 9 a.m. this morning, two unknown male individuals entered the property and approached the workmen. One of the pair brandished a firearm and began demanding that the men give up their personal items. As the second man gathered mobile phones and cash from the victims, the pair left the workmen unharmed and ran out of the cemetery grounds. We'll turn our attention overseas. The big news is in Washington, House Speaker John Boehner walked up to the podium to announce he will resign his seat in Congress while singing Zippity Doo-Dah. The announcement came as a surprise to many. Also, Pope Francis continued his New York trip with a stop at the Ground Zero Memorial. He stopped to pray in front of the memorial, then met with a group of 9/11 survivors and victims' families. He also held an interfaith prayer service. He kicked off the day by addressing the UN General Assembly. He warned delegates that the pursuit of power and wealth hurts the poor and the environment. Keeping our eye on the economy, here's our New York Stock Exchange with the Stock Market Watch. As we can see, the Dow is up 113, NASDAQ and S&P down, NASDAQ 47, S&P 500 also down. Coming up on News 2, today is the National Day of Remembrance for Murder Victims, and locally in the territory, many joined together for that recognition. We'll tell you how. Welcome back. Teachers across the Virgin Islands, they're getting something that could help them plan their day. On Friday, Office Max announced a donation of more than 1,300 daily planners for teachers printed specifically for the various schools by OfficeMax. About 700 planners were donated on St. Thomas and about 600 on St. Croix.
We decided to be a good faith effort for the community and show the community that Office Depot, OfficeMax is in support of the education of the children of the U.S. Virgin Islands. Obviously, those who help educate the children of the U.S. Virgin Islands, the teachers.
It will help certainly in the delivery of instruction to our students. What I'm holding in my hand is one for Charlotte Amalie High School, and we will have for all of our teachers as well as for our St. Croix district as well. This is an example of what we have said we would do, which is to build that partnership with the private sector. And we certainly want to thank OfficeMax for the donation.
Wonderful donation there. Senator Jean Ford, chairman of the Committee on Education and Workforce Development, successfully moved an amendment to the executive budget bill to require a maintenance person at each school provide $750,000 to hire school maintenance personnel and allow vocational students to participate in school maintenance under the guidance of their instructors for course credit. Ford, who has spoken for months about the need to improve school maintenance and to have personnel at each school, was enthusiastic, he said, about the passage of this legislation, saying that it will have a tangible impact on the campus of every public school in the territory. Today is the National Day of Remembrance for Murder Victims, and locally the territory takes time out to acknowledge and remember those lost to violence. It's the 8th year the Women's Coalition has been making the acknowledgement, and they want to see those numbers go down. NEWS2's Erica Parsons has that story.
The list of names of murdered victims in the VI keeps growing.
Since 1988, there's been 529 murders in the territory. Those are the numbers we captured. So if we captured 529 since 1988, something is wrong.
The Women's Coalition would like to see those numbers decline or disappear altogether.
We're having this day of memories because we want the violence to stop. We want people to put down the weapons. We want the families to say no more revenge. The pain got to stop, and let's start the healing.
For the last 7 years, they've hosted activities to honor and remember the territory's murder victims. It's all part of the National Day of Remembrance for Murder Victims. This year, the remembrance is a little different.
We have a National Day of Remembrance for Murder Victims VI on Facebook. We've had like 21,000 hits on the page, and a lot of people, not just in the Virgin Islands but around the country, are also posting on there, and it's becoming a very big movement in terms of remembering. A lot of people have unsolved mysteries, unsolved murders. A lot of people are putting up pictures of little kids, especially this year.
People wear red and black as a symbol of remembrance for the victims. It's just one way to support the families and honor the ones lost.
We know that there's a lot of families that are still grieving because we've had murders lately. So we want those family members to know that you can always reach out to the Women's Coalition. Our goal and our mission for the community and our promise to the community that we will support them in remembering their loved ones every single year.
Erica Parsons, NEWS2.
Well, the National Day of Remembrance for Murdered Victim, again, was established as a result of being unanimously passed by the U.S. Senate on October 16, 2007. Meanwhile, residents on St. Thomas gathered at the waterfront apron earlier today at 5:30 in honor of loved ones lost to violence. A release of roses into the harbor was held, one for each victim. Many wore red and black. Again, the official colors to signify National Day of Remembrance for Murdered Victims. The Family Resource Center is preparing for the start of events for Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and again, that's in October. Also, another recognition in memory. Each year, the nation recognizes the sacrifice of military families, especially when a father, mother, or other loved one dies in service to the nation. This Sunday, September 27th, the nation will observe Gold Star Mother's Day. Events will be held at military installations and national memorial sites, such as Arlington National Cemetery. Now, in the territory, the Survivor Outreach Services is hosting a Gold Star Family and Mother's Day recognition on St. Croix. That's scheduled for Saturday, September 26th at 10 a.m. in the Lionel Jackson Readiness Center in Estate Bethlehem. On St. Thomas, the event is Sunday, September 27th at 2 p.m. at the American Legion Patrick George Post, number 90 in Sub Base. And don't forget the Night Out event that begins from this evening to Monday. The annual event kicks off shortly with Spiritual Night at the Emancipation Garden. Then on Saturday, the parade and march will be held from 5 p.m. It begins at the Emile Griffith Ballpark to Emancipation Garden. Then they have planned a moment of community healing on Monday at 5:45 p.m. across from the Fort Christian parking lot. All civic, nonprofits, school groups, clubs, government agencies, all are welcome. You are asked to wear white and bring some flowers. Be sure to stick around. Your News 2 AccuWeather forecast comes your way next.